in geometry class, you would have talked about trigonometry, but there are actually 6 different trig functions, and you have probably only talked about 3 of them. So in this video, we're just going to have a brief introduction to all of our different trig functions and talking about the relationships that they may have with each other. So everything is based off of a right triangle when we're dealing with trig. And then you're going to have some type of angle, and this is what we like to call theta. Theta is just a variable. So I know it kind of looks like an egg, but it is just a variable. When we're looking at this, based on our theta here, our hypotenuse we know is always on the opposite side of the right angle. The O, or opposite side, is based off of theta. Are you on the opposite side of that triangle? Then the adjacent side is the side that actually is forms that theta and is not the hypotenuse. So we have SOHCAHTOA, which I'm hoping that you've heard by now, where you have sine equals opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine equals adjacent over hypotenuse, which makes sense based on our lettering there. Tangent equals opposite over adjacent. Now, there are 6 new trig functions, or there are 6 total, 3 new ones for you. There is what we call cosecant. Cosecant is aligned with sine, as in it is the reciprocal of that sine. So it is h over o. Secant matches up with cosine. It is the reciprocal, so we have h over a. And then last but not least, cotangent. This is, again, the reciprocal. So there is a connection between them. To kind of help you remember which one goes with which, the tangent and cotangent, those obviously, they make sense that they're together. The secant and the cosecant, I always think of it that I need an S and a C pair. So like cosine starts with a C, so its pair is secant because that starts with an S. Sine starts with an S, so its pair is cosecant because I need it to start with a C. That's just how I remember it. You might remember it a different way. That's fine. I'm just giving you what has helped me. So you're going to be asked to find our different trig functions based on a picture. So for instance, write all 6 trig functions. Okay, so this is great. I've got a picture here. 13 is my hypotenuse. Across from the theta is my 5. But, I'm missing an adjacent side. But the nice thing is we have a right triangle, so you can use Pythagorean theorem in order to solve for your adjacent side. So just a refresher, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I'm going to leave it as a for adjacent. So I've got 25 plus 5 plus a squared equals 169. Move that over, a squared equals 144. A therefore equals 12. So my adjacent side is 12. Okay, now I can write all of my different trig functions. Sine of theta. So sine, remember, is opposite over hypotenuse. So I have 5 over 12. Cosine of theta. That's adjacent over hypotenuse. So 12 over 13. Tangent theta is opposite over adjacent. So I've got 5 over 12. Now I'm going to match up my pairs. So sine starts with an S, so it matches up with cosecant. Cosecant of theta is 12 over 5. Cosine matches up with secant. So secant theta equals 13 over 12. Cotangent matches up with tangent, so I have 12 over 5. These are my 6 different trig functions. And as you can tell, I used Pythagorean theorem in order to find all of my sides. Now, that's the relationship between the 6 different trig functions. There is another relationship that we need to talk about. That relation is called a cofunction. So a cofunction is just the fact when we're talking about sine and cosine. They're going to be the 90s of each other, and that they kind of match up. So let's say, for instance, you have a right triangle, and then this is, oh, let's go with 35. By default, you know, we'd have to find that angle measure, which, looking at that angle measure, is going to be 55. Not that bad, because we know that the total degree measure of a triangle is 180. But here's what I'm trying to say. That relationship, the 35 and 55, have to add up to 90. So because of that, the sine of 35 equals the cosine of 55. That's the relationship together, is that the sine of your opposite angle is going to match up to the cosine of the other angle that is complementary to it. So you have sine of, let's say it's 90 minus alpha. So then the cosine is going to equal 90 minus beta. Sorry, using Greek terminology, but it's just notation. It's just a variable. But anyway, so that those match up with each other, so it's a little bit easier to depict those and figure out what those actually are. So this is just an introduction to our trig functions and remembering what our trig functions are. We will be looking at how to find those different angle measures or side lengths based on our trig functions in the next video.